Snow drifted steadily onto the deserted train platform as 28-year-old Emma Carter sat hunched on a frigid metal bench, her light blue nurse's scrubs offering little defense against the sharp bite of winter air. She had been waiting more than 2 hours for a train delayed indefinitely by the storm, her thin jacket useless against the kind of cold that pierced straight through to the bone. Emma had just walked out of a grueling 16-hour shift at Metropolitan General Hospital, where she served as a pediatric nurse. Though she loved the work, her paycheck barely stretched far enough to keep her in her modest studio apartment. Tonight, however, reality had struck hard. Her landlord had changed the locks while she was on duty. 3 months of overdue rent had finally caught up to her, and everything she owned now sat in boxes on the sidewalk, likely buried beneath the accumulating snow. Shivering, Emma clutched her small purse, wondering where she might find shelter for the night, when the sharp sound of polished shoes crunching against the snow reached her ears. She looked up to see a man in a sleek black coat approaching, a little girl bundled in a bright red jacket and knitted hat walking at his side. The man, likely in his mid-30s, carried the air of someone accustomed to success and authority, yet his expression held kindness rather than judgment. The child, hugging a small teddy bear, studied Emma with the curious, unguarded empathy only children possess. "Excuse me," the man said softly as he stopped before her, his concern evident. "My name is Alexander Winters, and this is my daughter Sophie. We were waiting for our car when I noticed you've been sitting here a long time. Are you all right?" Emma's cheeks burned with embarrassment at her situation, but she was moved by their sincerity. "I'm Emma," she replied, her voice trembling from both cold and exhaustion. "I'm waiting for a train, but it looks like it's not coming anytime soon." Alexander studied her face, noting the fatigue in her eyes and the way she tried, and failed, to hide her shivering. "Emma, forgive me if this is forward, but it seems you've had a very hard day. Is there any way we might help?" At that moment, Sophie tugged gently on her father's coat and whispered something into his ear. Alexander crouched to listen, their quiet exchange serious though Emma couldn't make out the words. When he stood again, his expression carried a thoughtful resolve. "Emma," he said, carefully choosing his words, "this may sound a little unusual, but Sophie and I would like to invite you to join us for a warm meal, while we discuss something that could be of benefit to all of us." Emma hesitated, her instinct for caution battling against her desperate need for warmth, and the genuine kindness she sensed from both father and daughter. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Winters, but I wouldn't want to intrude on your evening." Sophie stepped closer, her gaze earnest. "Please come with us, Miss Emma. Daddy says you're cold and sad, and we don't like when people are cold and sad." 20 minutes later, Emma sat in an elegant restaurant, wrapped snugly in Alexander's coat, her fingers thawing around a steaming bowl of soup. Sophie, seated beside her, animatedly shared stories about her favorite nurses at the hospital where she had been treated for asthma. Slowly, Emma felt herself begin to unwind in the glow of their warmth and safety. "Emma," Alexander said gently, "I hope you don't think I'm prying, but you mentioned being a nurse, and it seems you're facing a difficult situation tonight." Emma's composure cracked, tears brimming as the weight of her day pressed down. "I lost my apartment today," she admitted softly. "I've been working extra shifts to catch up on rent, but it wasn't enough. Now I have nowhere to stay." Father and daughter exchanged a glance, some silent understanding passing between them. "Emma," Alexander said at last, his tone both cautious and sincere, "what I'm about to propose may seem unconventional, but I'd like you to hear me out." Exhausted yet curious, Emma nodded. "My daughter and I live in a house far too large for just the two of us," he explained. "I'm a single parent, and my work requires frequent travel. Finding reliable, caring childcare for Sophie has been a constant challenge. What she needs is someone who understands children, and can offer the kind of nurturing presence I want for her when I'm away." Sophie nodded eagerly. "Daddy works really hard, but sometimes he has to go to other cities, and then I stay with babysitters who don't really know me." Alexander leaned in slightly. "Emma, you need a safe place to stay, and I need someone trustworthy to look after my daughter. What if we could help each other? You could live in our guest suite, your own privacy and space, and be here for Sophie whenever my work takes me away. In return, you'd have a home and a salary that would ease the financial strain, and let you continue your nursing career without worry." Emma blinked at them both, struggling to take it in. "Mr. Winters, that's unbelievably generous, but you don't really know me. How can you trust a complete stranger with your daughter?" Alexander's smile softened as he glanced at Sophie, who was already nodding with enthusiasm. "Emma, I've spent the last hour watching you with her. How you listen to her stories, how you answer her questions, the patience and kindness you show. It's clear you genuinely care about children. And the fact that you're a podiatric nurse tells me you have both the skills and the responsibility to keep her safe." Sophie reached out and held Emma's hand. "Miss Emma, I think you'd be wonderful in our family. You have kind eyes, and you make me feel safe." Overcome by the unexpected kindness, Emma's voice trembled. "I don't even know what to say. It feels too good to be true." "Just say you'll think about it," Alexander replied gently. "Why don't you come home with us tonight, see the house, see the room that would be yours, and take some time to decide if this could work for all of us?" 6 months later, Emma stood in the Winters' kitchen, preparing breakfast while watching Sophie play in the backyard garden they had planted together. What began as a desperate solution between strangers had transformed into something that felt astonishingly like a real family. Emma had come to see that Alexander was not just a driven businessman, but also a loving father who longed to give Sophie stability and affection. Her responsibilities had naturally grown beyond childcare, shaping a warm and welcoming household that both Alexander and Sophie had been missing. For Alexander, Emma became far more than a dependable caregiver. She became his partner in building a home filled with laughter, warmth, and comforting daily rituals. Her medical knowledge was invaluable during Sophie's occasional asthma flare-ups, and her natural tenderness helped Sophie flourish emotionally. "Emma," Alexander said one morning as he stepped into the kitchen, straightening his tie before work, "there's something I need to talk to you about." Emma looked up from packing Sophie's lunch, sensing the weight in his tone. "This arrangement has turned out better than I ever dreamed," Alexander went on. "Sophie adores you, and you've given us a sense of peace and joy I didn't realize we were missing." Emma's heart skipped a beat, worried he might be about to change everything. Instead, Alexander took her hands. "What I want to ask is if you'd consider making this permanent, just in a different way. Emma, I've fallen in love with you. Not just for the way you care for Sophie, but because you've turned this house into a true home." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she realized her gratitude had grown into something deeper, love. Alexander smiled. "Sophie and I have talked about this, and she's very much in favor of asking you to become the heart of our family." At that moment, Sophie burst in through the kitchen door, clearly having listened in from the hallway. "Miss Emma, will you marry Daddy and be my real mommy? I've been wishing for this for months." Emma laughed through her tears, looking at the little girl who had become her daughter in every way and the man who had shown her that even the darkest moments could lead to something beautiful. "Yes," she whispered, embracing them both. "I'd be honored to be your real family." 1 year later, at their wedding in the garden where Emma and Sophie had planted flowers together, Alexander spoke of how one snowy night at a train station had changed everything. "A year ago, I thought I was offering Emma a practical arrangement that solved problems for us both," he said in his wedding toast. "What I discovered is that when you open your home to someone in need, you sometimes find the very thing your heart was missing." Emma, glowing in her wedding gown with Sophie proudly standing as maid of honor, thought back to the night she had felt at her lowest. That moment had become the start of everything she had ever hoped for. She smiled at her new family and their friends gathered around them, realizing, sometimes the most meaningful proposals aren't about marriage, but about the chance to build a life together. And sometimes, when two people take the risk of trusting each other with their deepest needs, they discover they can create something more beautiful than they ever imagined. The homeless nurse and the lonely CEO had found, in each other, not just solutions, but the missing pieces that made them whole.